Welcome to the Finding Financial Freedom podcast with the Frugal Physician, where Dr. Disha Spath will be your companion on this exciting financial adventure. Get ready to conquer debt, build wealth, and embrace a mindful spending lifestyle that will empower you to live life on your own terms.
At Reza and Sharif CPAs, they provide more than just tax returns and financial statements. They deliver strategic financial solutions tailored to your needs. Whether you're a business owner, physician, or investor, Reza and Sharif CPAs can help you navigate complex tax laws, maximize savings, and build long-term wealth. With expert tax planning, accounting, and advisory services, Reza and Sharif CPAs ensure your finances work for you, not the other way around. Take control of your financial future today. Visit rezasharif.com. That's REZASHARIF.com to see how they can help you. Welcome to Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician. I'm your host, Dr. Disha Spath, and here we explore practical ways to achieve financial independence while prioritizing what truly matters in life. Today, I'm thrilled to have two incredible guests with us, Gelerie and Erik. Dr. Gelerie Stenbakken is a seasoned anesthesiologist with over 21 years of experience, and Erik has a fascinating background spanning teaching, PR, marketing, and photography. Together, they've built a thriving real estate portfolio of long-term and short-term rentals, achieving financial freedom and sharing their expertise with others. We're diving into their inspiring journey, focusing on strategies that worked for them and actionable advice for our listeners. Welcome to the podcast, Gelerie and Erik.
Thank you so much, Disha. It's really nice to be invited.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. To start, can you share a little more about your background and how your paths converged on this amazing real estate journey? Gelerie, let's start with you.
Well, I was a medical technologist for a couple years and then decided to go into medicine. And so I became an anesthesiologist. And once I started working as an attending, I realized that the 70 to 80 hour work week was just a little more than I was wanting to take on. And so after doing that for a few years, I decided to change positions and go join a different group, which then allowed me to drop down for part-time work. So that was kind of where we started. And at that point, we were trying to make choices in what we were going to do with my job change and also the area where the location of that new job we were considering moving. And so that kind of started the process.
Yeah, and to be clear, when she says she went part-time, that means she was down to maybe 50 hours a week. There were some other people who thought I was a single father. We had a baby at the time and then a toddler. And as we looked for another house, we were going to move to another town closer to where her new job was, which was very close, really, only about a 45-minute drive. But they had a stipulation that you had to live within, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes for call. And so we thought, well, we're going to have to move. And we looked and looked and looked for a property that was like the one that we have, and we couldn't find anything. Well, in that process, the real estate agent who was showing us around would drive by houses and say, well, that one's one of mine. Oh, that one's one of mine. That one's one of mine. And I asked him, I said, what in the world? Like, how many houses do you have? This doesn't make any sense to me. He said, I have about 80. Wait, what? 80? You can have 80 homes? Mm-hmm. And it just switched on in my head that said, this is a thing that people do this. It had never occurred to me. It was a seed. It was planted pretty deep. We didn't jump right in on that. Eventually, we got into it because we had played the game called Cash Flow. It's written by Kiyosaki, the famous author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And we realized, wow, we need some sort of passive income thing going on here, because my work in commercial photography at the time was very demanding. I would be gone for, all of October and almost all of April, almost every year, home for one day on a weekend and gone. And I'm carrying, anywhere from 70 to 100 pounds of gear everywhere I go. And I'm using wheels and whatnot, but there's long days, right? Traveling, and I'm gone, and she's doing overnight call and weekends. And we both realized, like,
trying to manage a baby at the same time, toddler.
Yeah. And we thought, wait a minute, we're going to have to be doing this into our 60s and 70s if we don't do something different. And that's what really lit the fire for us to come up with something.
So in the process of when we were trying to find another place to live, we actually ended up buying land, and we were going to build on this land, and it was going to be a 5,000 square foot house. And we didn't have hardly any furniture from the house we were already living in. So we knew we were going to have to furnish that. And all things kind of came to a head when we were having trouble with with the contracted from the buyers. They kept wanting to change the
Well, we had this house
contract.
for sale that we're
Yeah.
in right now. We were ready to sell it. We had an offer, and the buyers who were looking to buy the house, spoiler alert, that we're still in, kept adding things. Well, we want this, and we want you to do this, and we want you to do this. And the last thing is they said, and we want your new refrigerator.
And it was just a minor thing. And if we really had felt that that was important to do, we would have done it. But at that point, we started thinking about, we don't really need that house. And this goes back to being the frugal physician kind of thing. We didn't need it. We had everything we wanted, and we didn't need it. And so we decided, let's not jump into something that's going to be basically we're going to be have a house, kind of an empty house.
Yeah.
What is that? House poor?
Yeah, the house rich and life poor. And so we decided we were not going to do it, which is a pro tip. If you're making an offer on a house, don't annoy people with little details like that. Because what in real estate, I'm a licensed agent. And anytime you counter, the previous contract is then void. And the other party can simply say, nope. And then that's it. You can't go backwards. And that's what happened when we had this one for sale. And the agent who was representing the buyer said, that's crazy. Why would you do that? I said, you got to have that talk with your buyers. We've decided we're not selling. And that's it. That was 16 years ago or so. And what happened is that we'd been saving some money to build this home. And by a lot of doctor dream home standards, it was probably pretty modest. And it was going to be a 2,500 square foot ranch with a full basement is what it was going to be. But we decided we didn't want to do it. And so what we did instead is we'd made contact with this real estate agent who had a bunch of rental properties. And we said, is this the kind of thing that you think we could do? And if you ask a real estate agent, they're going to say yes. They're like, yes, I'll buy a house for you. And so that started our journey. We took the money that we had saved to build this dream house, and instead we put that as down payments into rental properties.
Yeah, to long-term.
Wow, what a shift. You guys were about to massively inflate your lifestyle, but you took a U-turn and you decided, I'm going to invest this money instead and make it work for me. And you decided to jump in with this real estate agent that you just met and were inspired by. I mean, that is such an inspiring move and a brave one. Tell me a little bit more about what went into that decision-making.
Well, honestly, when we first started, we didn't know a lot about it. I mean, I did start looking at Bigger Pockets and listening to that. But at the same time, we were just trying to just do the math. So if, the mortgage cost is going to be $1,200 a month, if we can get $1,400 or $1,600 a month for it, then we're money ahead. Yeah. And that was kind of how the first one happened. And we kind of stumbled through finding a renter. And as we went along, we just got better at vetting our renters and also just recognizing when is it a good deal. The first deal was kind of our agent was like, here's a property, you should go for it. And we're like, no, we're not sure. And then it got snapped up just like that. And then we learned from that. And we thought, you know what, that was a good deal. We should have jumped on that. And this was in 2010. And so when another opportunity came up like that, we were ready to go. And that's when we jumped in. And because it was 2010, it was a tough market. I mean, people were selling homes because they just couldn't afford it anymore. And we were able to pick up. Well, we ended up picking up between 2010 and 2012, we picked up 5 long-term rentals.
Single family or duplexes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, single family, long-term, and outside
Near
of
university.
Yeah, outside of the university. And It's worth mentioning, we had done some studying about this. We knew some friends who owned some long-term rentals, and we thought they're pretty casual about it. If they could do it, we could probably do it. But I think I read a booklet or something like this on it, but I had never heard of BiggerPockets. She mentioned it. I thought it was a fashion website or something. I was like, I have no idea about real estate. And so this is important. We didn't know everything before we got started.
And you don't have to know everything.
And you'll never get started if you wait until you feel like you know everything, because you'll never know everything, which means you'll never get started.
Speaking of jobs, what happened to that job that you took that you had to be close to the hospital for? How'd you make that work?
Well, funny thing about that, I accepted the position, and they opened up a new hospital that was close to me. And so then it wasn't a priority anymore for me to have to, so we didn't end up building the house. But the other thing is that they were just a better group to begin with. And I have just been so thankful that I've worked with them for over 17 years. And when I came in for the interview, they asked me what I wanted. And I basically said, I want to be part-time. My goal is not to be a full-time anesthesiologist. I want to be able to have time to spend with my family. And so I negotiated that from the very beginning. So they understood that that was my goal and that they were willing to accommodate me. And that was a blessing.
And yeah, that's so important to put your cards on the table when you're negotiating and be honest and have a clear perspective of what you want and make that connection. And when you do, things work out. So let's go backwards to your first property, the first place that you bought. Tell us about that and how you ran the numbers.
Well, would you like to know about the first vacation rental or first long-term rental?
We can do a quick for the short-term, long-term.
Yeah, let's talk about the long-term rental.
It was probably about third grade math that we did. In case anybody's like super intimidated by this, we just looked at it and said, well, how much is rent? Okay, rent is, I don't know, $1,600. And how much is our mortgage? $1,200. Okay, we're in the black. Let's do it.
Yeah.
We hadn't calculated things like, taxes and insurance and depreciation and CapEx, which stands for capital expenses. We're going to eventually have to replace a roof. And so although you only do that once every maybe 20 years, you need to start saving for that. We hadn't done those calculations, but you know what? It was okay, because here's what happens. Our mortgage stayed the same, but year after year, the rent prices kept going up. And we thought, oh, wow, this is pretty cool.
So I will say about that first property, there's that 1% rule for rental properties and how to make sure that it's going to be successful. And we didn't have 1% on that property. I think we were more like 0.75%.
At best. What that 1% rule means is just if you make $2,000 a month in rent, the house should be purchased for $200,000. It's 1% of the purchase price. Now that's an old rule, and almost nowhere can you get that anymore on a decent property.
This show is sponsored by Set for Life Insurance, the ultimate client experience in the insurance industry. Are you looking for the perfect insurance coverage that suits your needs? Founded in 1993 by President Jamie K. Fleischner, Set for Life Insurance specializes in individual life, disability, and long-term care insurance. As brokers, they represent numerous companies in the industry, ensuring that their clients get the best products at the most cost-effective rate. What sets Set for Life Insurance apart? You'll enjoy special discounts, priority underwriting handling, and even exceptions in the underwriting process. So why wait? Contact Set for Life Insurance today and let them be your insurance partner for life. Visit their website at www.setforlifeinsurance.com or call them toll-free at 1-888-553-3559. It's a rule of thumb. It's a quick way to analyze a property at a first glance, but it's definitely not a hard and fast rule. And if you're holding on to a property for the long term and have other income, well, that's kind of like a risk mitigator. Even if it's not a good deal to start with, it'll become a good deal if you hold on to it long enough.
Exactly.
There you go. And that's the part that is is worth mentioning is that real estate should be viewed, in my opinion, as a get-rich-slow program, not a income, massive cash flow, I hate my job, I'm going to quit next week kind of proposition. It's a good way to store wealth and grow wealth because we sold the first house that we had.
That one we sold, and actually by the time we sold it, it had more than doubled in value.
Right. So we made more in appreciation than we did in straight rent.
Right, which is the other part of real estate investing. Sometimes, the prices on homes go up most of the time. They go up. Unfortunately, in 2008 and during that time frame, a lot of people were upside down on their properties, and the problem was that they had to sell then, and they couldn't, and the price of the home was lower when they sold, and that's how they took the loss.
Right, but an interesting fact about that is that there is no 10-year span in U.S. real estate where over that 10 years, real estate has fallen in price. If you give it 10 years, it will be higher than any span. So if you go from 2008 to 2018, it was higher in 2018 than 2008. Even if you go to 2008 and back to into the 90s, in 2008, it was worth more than it was in the 90s, even at the low price.
Which is much like the stock market, which reminds us again that investments, if held long-term, generally tend to go up. And that's why we invest, right? To make our money grow. And if you can hold on through the bad cycles, you'll probably be just fine. Again, probably because past results are no guarantee of future results. So yeah, really great investment tips. So you guys ended up selling this property and made a profit. Then tell us more about your real estate journey. What happened next?
So after we ended up buying those 5 long-term rentals, and we were managing them on our own. And in 2014, I had a breast cancer scare. And so that is all cleared up. It was DCIS. And so I didn't have to get chemo or any of that, but I did have to have surgery. And then after that, we started thinking about, what's important to us? What are our life goals, our life values? What do we want to do? And one of those things that has come up before in the past is we wanted a vacation home. And we wanted a vacation home in the Colorado Rockies. And so Erik had been searching for one for a while. He'd been trying to find something off the grid, and I didn't want something off the grid. So I was kind of being the wife that was like, oh, sure. Yeah, look into it. And then I would just kind of ignore him when he would say, oh, I found this property, or, oh, I found this land. And then once we got into alignment on, okay, this is important now to both of us, then we started looking at something that we both would like to have.
Right. And the transition there came, we'd stayed at a cabin that one of her partners invited us to up in the Rockies. And we really enjoyed it. This is a lovely town. It's just a quiet area. It's not a traditional ski town like Breckenridge or Vail or Aspen or anything like this. Way low key. And we said we really like it. And so we started looking in that community. And as soon as we started looking, we had dinner with some people who became friends who owned a small cabin up in that area. And we realized, we went out to dinner with them, and before the main course arrived, they had been just visiting with us a little bit. We realized, wait a minute, we could buy a vacation property and it would pretty close to pay for itself. Yeah. See, up until this time, we just wanted a property that would be a legacy property.
Because we could pass on to our kids.
Because I had, as a child, grown up playing in the Rockies. My grandparents lived up there. And I met a guy who lived on a homestead that literally was a stop on the Pony Express. We used to play in his driveway. And he told me one day, he said, look out here. Everything that you see, our family once owned this. And I thought, well, you can't go back in time and do that again. And it just stuck in me. It's like, you got to do it. You got to take some action. So I wanted some kind of property, and it didn't make sense to just buy a little rustic cabin and then it would just be for us. You have to take a 4-wheel drive to it in the summer and a snow machine in the winter. It just didn't make sense. And then we found, oh, wait, you could buy a nice property and rent it when we're not there. Mm-hmm. It would pay for itself and be a nice place. And we said, that's it. We're in. We're doing it. And we ended up buying a place within just a few months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it actually was, I found it. It was off market because someone had already was already under contract, but I kept coming back to it. And the moment it came out of contract and was back on sale, I came running into his office and I'm like, we have to go to see this house right now. And so we were able to go up and put an offer on it. And that was our first vacation rental. Yeah.
And did it work out? Did it pay for itself?
Yes, it did.
More than. And that was a surprise to us. We really hadn't expected this to be a positive cash flow thing. We got it and it did rent quite well. And this is an important thing to insert here, is that real estate goes in cycles. Now, this is obvious and to anybody who's followed it, but there are a lot of people who jumped in 2020, 2021. And let me just say, everyone who jumped in there was a genius for about 3 years. You couldn't lose. Well, real estate goes through cycles. We bought this on a cycle where things were getting better and better and the rents were going up. And what ends up happening then is everybody else wants in. And so the inventory of available rental properties went way up, which supply and demand means that the demand went down. And so our income went down a little bit. That was okay because we hadn't calculated this to the nearest nickel and we'd go broke if we didn't make the income, because vacation rentals are volatile. It's a volatile market space. It can be really, really good, or it can be not so good. And we entered some slim time after that, but we saw that the potential was there and we said we were going to do this again. So we started looking for another vacation rental in that same market.
And this was the one that we were wanting to talk to you about,
right,
and share about. This is the one that it's in Grand Lake, and we actually had this house built.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of upfront investment then.
There was, but also I would point out that everything is negotiable. See, people sometimes look at a thing and think, well, that's just how it is, right? It's like, no, you can ask for anything you want.
You may not get it.
You might not get it, but you can ask for anything. And as it turns out, the builder that we worked with wanted to carry the loan. And so he said, no, I'm going to own the lot, because it would get kind of weird if we owned the lot, but he was like partially building on it. He didn't like that idea. We did not know how fortunate we were. He carried the building loan. He built the property. We put down a $25,000 deposit while he worked, and that's it. We paid for a few upgrades, but he floated the whole loan the whole time. And when he was done, about a year later, we simply went to closing, and we did really well on that. It doesn't always work this way. We've had the opposite happen to us also. And that's a different story. But in this case, the appreciation during the process of the build made the property worth about $75,000 more than what we were paying for it.
In fact, the bank called and said, are you sure these numbers are right? The assessor is saying that this is $75,000 more than what you're saying. And we said, well, that's because it's been a year and now the property is appreciated and we got built-in equity.
Okay, so then you got the place and furnished it and put it on the market. How much did that cost?
So it's a funny story. Usually when we furnish a house now that's remote, that's far away from us, we usually say about $10,000 per bedroom to furnish the whole house.
Right.
Like, so if I have a 5-bedroom house in Tennessee, I figured out that it'll probably be about $50,000 to $60,000 that it'll cost me to furnish the entire house. And that also depends on what kind of quality furnishings you are. Also, if you end up putting a custom play ship in the yard, then that's going to cost a little bit more, which is what he decided he wanted, which is fine. But anyways, for the one in Grand Lake, we actually probably only spent, for this 5-bedroom house, we only spent about $25,000 to $30,000.
25 probably.
But only because I was the one who was shopping secondhand on Craigslist and all over for furniture. And then part of it also was from just box stores, big box stores like Ashley's Furniture, Furniture Row. But so my side of the garage was filled with furniture for about 6 months as I was collecting
Yeah.
this stuff. But one advantage to that is I was able to get some really nice furniture for a discounted price.
Way discounted.
So I got Ethan Allen, I got Stickley, Kincaid, and
For just a couple
Roy
hundred
Hill,
bucks,
yeah.
$100 a piece. And for some of the bigger pieces, we had to rent a U-Haul truck. And when she says it was her half of the garage, she parked in the outside for a year, or just a little less, while we were stacking up the furniture in the garage, like to the ceiling, for the house. And so that's how we furnished it. We do
know
own
we're
and
not
operate
gonna
some
do that.
places out of state, and it's just not practical. Because one of the calculations we have to make is if we buy a property, let's just say, for example, on April 1. Well, if you can start renting that by April 15, time is money. And so you could spend 6 months making a deal, saving $3,000, $5,000, even $10,000 on furniture, but then you've lost $30,000 in rent. That's not a good trade.
Yeah.
And so you've always got to be looking at what's involved.
And so for this, I knew we had time. And so I was just slowly accumulating furniture, but we have had to outfit a property in basically a 2-month span.
Less.
And so I've called a furniture store and I said, what do you have available? What can you get me now? When can you ship this? And then they do the whole thing. I mean, they can do that in the Smoky Mountains like nobody's business because they have so many vendors there. And that's one thing to consider also as you're looking for a vacation rental somewhere. You want to make sure you have good infrastructure. And so that you have the vendors, you have the places that you can get the supplies that you need, and how easy is it to do that. And versus if you're in some mountain town that's a small mountain town and you can hardly get any vendors and they're going to charge you an arm and a leg for something, you have to put that into your equation and consider that also.
Yeah, there's homework to do.
All right, guys, let's pause here because this episode is jam-packed with so much good information that we're going to divide it into 2, and we'll bring you part 2 next week. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to reach out to us or leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you for joining us today on Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician. Remember, stay frugal, y'all.
The content shared on this podcast should not be taken as individualized financial advice. We are here to share our knowledge and experiences, but it is crucial to consult with professionals such as accountants, financial advisors, or attorneys who can provide personalized guidance based on your specific needs.